I was born in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, on the 6th of January, 1925. And we lived there for about 2 years. And then in 1927, my father got his first full-time job as a minister near a little town called Windsor, Pennsylvania now. So we moved. I had one older brother at the time. So there were just my brother and I, and my mother and father moved to this little town. Well, it wasn't a town. We moved to a house in the country. The church, the congregation that hired my father was made up of 3 small churches. But next to the biggest church, there was a house where we were to live. It was in the country. You couldn't see another house from where we lived. There were woods all around, and a dirt road went down the road in front of the house. Well, there was a paved road that came down to the church and to the cemetery. Okay, I should say that. There was, between the house and the church was a large cemetery. A lot of open space. So we moved there, and soon after that, of course, I had another brother, and eventually I had 2 more brothers and a sister. So there were 6 children in the family by the time before we left that place.
What did you do with your brothers? How did you entertain yourselves?
Well, being in the country, as I said, there were no other houses close, so I didn't have any little friends that I could run across the street and play with. So the only one I really had to play with were these 2 older brothers. And so we spent most of our time together when I'm talking about playtime. And I'll tell you this little story. The older brother was always in charge, and we would always, we'd start out saying, well, what are we going to do today? And I'd have a suggestion, and they'd have a suggestion. And then he would always say, well, okay, let's take a vote. So we would vote, and of course, my younger brother always voted with his brother. It was always 2-1. I always lost. And it's just what I lived with. And I complained about that a lot, but, it was still what I did for fun in the daytime. If it was winter, we played inside. We played different kinds of games. There was certainly no television. There wasn't even a radio that we listened to when we were younger. When we were outside, we played ball, and we played tag, and we played things that kids play outside, I guess. And the big open area between the house and the church was the cemetery. And we spent a lot of time running in the cemetery, playing tag, hide and seek. That was another good one in the cemetery. We'd hide. And we were very aware of what we were doing, and I know Mother didn't like that we were playing there, but she said we should be respectful and not ever disturb the flower arrangements or whatever there were. And we did. And I think we were smart enough. We knew that if anybody was around or there was anybody just visiting the cemetery, we would hide. We would disappear. We would go home. We didn't do these things when there were people around. And it was, I remember many times that we would be playing, and we would see, there was one old man that was in charge of the cemetery. And we would see him coming sometimes with his shovel and his picks and what have you. And we would talk to him, and he would inform us of who had just died and that he had to now dig a grave. And we would watch him and we would talk to him, and we knew him, and it wasn't fun, but it was what we did. And then, of course, a day or two later is the funeral, and we would be very scarce on that day. We would not be anywhere near the cemetery. But that was just an activity place we had. There was a lot of grass that, was just plain grass where there wasn't a cemetery yet. That was a good place to play ball and chase each other.